Okay, as there is no apologies, we'll move on to Councillor Jeffries, your words of wisdom.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Oh, sorry guys, we're live streaming, by the way, just a heads up.
Oh, right.
No pressure.
Gonna change it.
Well, the Maori language has a number of dialects, and you're about to hear another. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa paunano te moana, kia te rei te ka rohi rohi. It means, may the calm be widespread, may the sea glisten like the greenstone, and may the shimmer of summer ever dance across your pathway.
Are there any agenda items in which any councillors have to declare a conflict of interest in today's agenda? Good. Moving on to public forum. There's nobody asked to speak, but Heather, would you like the opportunity to speak in the public forum, or? Thank you. Confirmation of minutes of Otorohanga District Council dated 16th of June 2020. Do we have a move and a second for those, please? Councillor Ferguson, second Councillor Jeffries, all in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there any corrections in there? Yes, Councillor?
It's in the councillor update. It's the joint committee under my notes where it says Waikato Regional Council approved 3 business cases. That's the joint committee approving them to go to the Waikato Regional Council long-term plan.
Thank you. Nothing further? All good, thanks councillors. I gave a verbal report a couple of weeks ago, so today my verbal report today is there's not a lot of updating to and make it more beneficial next time. So I'll move on to the Chief Executive's report. Tony.
Yep, thank you for you, Your Worship. So sort of trying to get some back to some sense of whatever the new normal is. We've got all staff back in the office pretty much now, and so I've updated you on what we're doing in alert level 1 that we're at the moment. Obviously with what's happened in the last week or so with some new cases coming through, we are on alert, for want of a better description, and always ready to transition back. Our vision of flexible workspaces is being brought to life. We had several more laptops and tablets distributed to staff so that we can make that transition more easily to working remotely if we need to. The long-term plan is back on track. Not that it wasn't on track, but it was more difficult, I guess, to conduct our project team meetings remotely. So there's been quite a bit of intensive work go on in the last wee while. We had a workshop with you last week. We've got workshops coming up with both community boards to sort of set the scene around the early engagement focus that we're wanting to do. So it's going to be massive. It's going to require councillor and board leadership and input as we head out on a huge roadshow around the district to hear about people's dreams, hopes, aspirations, their visions for our future as a district. I think that's all I want to speak about. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor.
Just regarding the long-term plan with the environmental scan, is that like refuse and recycling? Is that what?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, councillor. So the environmental scan really is what's going on around us. So it's what could impact on, I guess, our own provision of services or our aspirations as a community. Graham might be able to kind of embellish that a wee bit more. It's really just what's going on around us that could impact on what we want to do. Is that a fair summary? Yeah. So to give you some examples, like an environmental scan for us might look at what's happening, say with the economy, what our demographics are doing, what even our hazardscape in terms of what impact that could have on infrastructure, any government regulations or legislation that might be coming at us. So yeah, it's pretty much putting all of that, whether there's going to be an election in the middle of a long-term plan, those sorts of things.
So you're particularly around the post-COVID recovery as well, you know, so we're getting like infometrics on what's happening with local businesses and the economy within the district.
Thank you. I'd like to just express a concern about the use of technology with meetings, especially for those of us who choose to live in the sticks, where there is very poor internet connectivity, and at the moment it's actually non-existent phone systems. Landlines have been down for 2 weeks, and no sign of and until there is a major investment in rural connectivity, I think we are fully served by doing Zoom meetings. I find when I was able to participate in Zoom meetings, I found you lost a lot from what the people are saying. You miss out on the nuances. And absolutely seeing a person in their mannerisms and behaviour and expressions, you're actually missing half of what they're saying. And so I would sincerely not like to think that won't become the standard norm, depending on what happens around COVID.
Yes.
Yeah, hear you loud and clear, councillor, and there's been moments where we've all been dropped out of meetings and it's been really difficult, so I can't even imagine what it must be like to you know, have that happening all the time. I guess for us, we will continue to meet in person. There is provision in the epidemic legislation, which the government has just agreed will continue to the end of September, and that basically gives local government the provision to meet remotely and make decisions remotely. So that is the purpose of having that legislation in place, but it's a backstop should we go into lockdown again or need to work remotely. It does mean that if councillors are in a remote location and wish to dial in and they've got a good connection that they actually can, they can participate and vote, which at the moment the Local Government Act doesn't permit. So in the epidemic legislation does permit that till the end of September, and then there's a remit being put to the Local Government New Zealand Conference or AGM in August from one of the councils that would like to see, and it's got support from a lot of them, which would see that in place permanently, the ability to dial in by Zoom if a councillor wished to, but we'll be holding our meetings in person.
I hope so. Because when it came to voting, I actually often wasn't asked if I was voting, and so you didn't really know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, when you're making big decisions, I definitely don't think that that's an appropriate place to be doing it.
I think I noticed that some councils, through you, Worship, I noticed some councils have, when they send out meeting requests, they have Zoom, by Zoom, they have Zoom protocols, how you are expected to signal that you want to speak, how you're expected to vote, and all of that. So we're getting better at it. At the moment, you can see we've kind of cobbled up, cameras, and we're just doing the best with what we've got. So I guess as we maybe use it a bit more, we can refine and hopefully improve. Can't help the bad internet coverage though, that's someone else's.
Well,
we can advocate for it.
As a councillor, I think that for your ratepayers, I think you should be pushing harder for better internet connectivity through whoever.
And I would say that's a we rather than a you. I'd say it's all of us pushing as a council, management and elected members when every opportunity we get.
Absolutely. Yes.
No, it's a challenge across the board. I had to record an entire meeting last night on Zoom and send that recording on to the secretary because she checked out before the meeting even started. So thankfully at least you got that capacity to record, which was something I didn't know about before that meeting as well. So.
Thank you.
Good. Yes, Councillor.
Through you, Your Worship. Tony, the Te Puna animal products processing plant, at what stage is that at? Is it still?
Your Worship, I've been advised that earthworks has started on preparation for the foundation.
Okay. So all of the consents have been given at this stage, obviously. And just one other quick question, the PDU, the funding opportunities, well, does sewage come into those?
Why Vet? Does Worship answer questions about that meeting? That was yesterday's meeting.
Not much comes out of the PDU at the moment.
Right. Okay.
I think they're so over allocated and they changed a lot of the funding opportunities. It's frustrating. I mean, in the meeting we had yesterday was with the regional lead for the PDU of this northern part of the country. She was here in a meeting along with our normal representative, one of them. And you bring up simple things like, we got a letter or an email on the 11th of June asking us, we've got until the 26th of June to get an application so we can do our town hall and Pacifica churches. And as I highlighted, it wouldn't take too much research to find we have neither in Otorohanga, so why bother sending the email? And it's things like that is a real issue. Also frustrating with that was the BT Home application that's gone on from the beginning. First off, it was all go, then they changed their mind that no, they don't come into it, then it came back on board again. And BT Home is applying under a different regime at the moment, but the minister's saying one thing, but their policy says another. So it's just a battle the whole way through. And we even asked about other opportunities going forward. Is it worthwhile putting applications in? And the simple answer was no. I think at this stage, as we're leading up to elections, the politicians are definitely saying one thing and the officials are saying something else. And there may be a PGF 2.0 post-election, we're not sure yet.
Yeah, so yeah, just to add to that, to Your Worship, they're really wanting projects where you can have a contract signed in 2 weeks from the grant being approved. So the $245,000 that Roger's team put together for the tree pruning and that is what they're wanting. They're wanting those kind of projects where when they say shovel ready, they're talking about signing seeing a contract with a contractor in pretty much 2 weeks from the grant being released. If it's not happening in the next 6 weeks, then forget it. Don't even put in an application. And yeah, as the Mayor said, we talked about longer term projects and they're just waiting for an election and to see whether the PDF will come back in another form.
Right, well, thank you for that. That's disappointing, but yeah, sort of. I guess you live in hope in a lot of cases, don't you? That funding for things like the sewage thing can't will eventually, but clearly that isn't happening at this stage. So thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? I'd like to move that the Chief Executive report be received. Second, Councillor Johnson, all in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item 84, Otorohanga Kiwi House Loan Agreement. Graham.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. So hopefully we're just about at the end of the journey here, and So last week, Council heard submissions on our statement of proposal for a $2 million loan to the Kiwi House. We'd received 17 submissions, of which 16 were in support, with one submission asking that it be deferred. So this report is basically to approve the loan. That was the indication that Council gave us last week. There's some draft conditions that I've included in this report. Currently, Gully Miles, our solicitors, have put together a draft loan agreement. I guess I had to, because of the short time frame, I sort of had to start moving on that even before we had council approval to approve the loan. Otherwise, we were going to run out of time. So they'll then work with the solicitors for the Kiwi House in terms of fine tuning that loan agreement, and there may have to be some other sort of I guess MOUs put in place, particularly around the change of name, from the Zoological Society to the Community House, Otorohanga Kiwi House Charitable Trust, just to make sure that we've got that locked down, that the agreements are with the right people and the right chain of events happen. We're going to, I guess, add another couple of parts to this recommendation, which will give the Mayor and Chief Executive the ability to change the conditions that are in this report if they're only minor, and that would just give us a little bit more flexibility. There's already, I guess, one there just at the bottom there in terms of audited financial statements, and so I'd made an incorrect assumption there. The Kiwi House's financial year ends at the end of May, and they don't meet the threshold to provide audited accounts, so they don't have to have them audited. So I mean, it's just some minor changes there, which I don't think really alters the intent of the conditions. I guess if council want to change anything, in terms of the term or the interest rates, etc., they really need to probably do that now at this meeting, and then we can. Otherwise, we're not going to meet the time frame. So the clause that we wanted to add in. Did you have that there, Tony?
Yep. Would you like me to read it?
Yeah.
Through you, Worship. So the clause would say something like, the Chief Executive and Mayor be given delegated authority to finalise the terms and conditions of the loan agreement. If, in the opinion of the Chief Executive and Mayor, the conditions vary from what was originally intended by Council, a report would come back to Council to approve those changes. So we're talking about minor changes, not major changes, and I guess you'd be leaving it to our judgment, collective judgment, around where that threshold is.
Yeah, so I had a conversation with our solicitor this morning at Gully Miles, so they will be in direct contact with the Kiwi House's solicitors, and often is the way with these type of agreements, there's always minor changes to wording, and so they would then report those back to council. So.
Thanks, Graham. Councillor Kloss.
Reading through this, and I actually thought of it under security, but it doesn't quite fit here. The key element of this project are Kiwis. And where is the guarantee that we will continue to be able to have Kiwi? And I would like to see a statement provided to council that DOC will continue for period of time to ensure that they are, that this organisation is able to continue with what it's doing with Kiwi, because there's no guarantee, because we don't own the Kiwi.
No, I did have a conversation with Heather this morning about where DOC stances are at the moment. Try and get this right, but at this stage there's the assurance there, but it just needs the final approval, not final approval. I wanted to speak to this, yeah.
Thank you. They've given us a letter assuring us that the funding to see us through the COVID period until tourists come back will be provided. So we have that assurance, but your dock, basically our dock permissions rest on our facilities being up to scratch for animal welfare, and that's why we've connected this development with all the other issues with loan. We have no thought at this stage, or have certainly not been given any indication that our Kiwi permits are in any way endangered, and in fact if any of the other Kiwi keeping facilities fall over as a result of COVID, we are the first place that they will be looking to transfer other Kiwi to us.
It is really more, I use the word attitudinal view of DOC in relation to how we should be dealing with Kiwi in New Zealand. It would be a philosophical kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably outside of the realms of any condition of the loan agreement in this case, because I can't speak or even get inside of what DOC's thinking is going forward.
I would like to have some assurance from the head of DOC that at this stage, there is no inclination or intention to actually review how we manage our Kiwi in New Zealand. It's not unknown for different views to come in.
Through you, Chair, if they're going to will pay operating costs to keep them going, is that not a guarantee that?
No, it's a philosophical argument about whether Kiwi should be managed in those kind of ways. And it's not just across this one. And they do have little mind-blowing things happening at different times depending on who happens to actually be
I think at this point in time we have to be comfortable and assured that DOC are going to follow through with their word and the assurance that they've given to the Kiwi House.
So it has to be in good faith.
Most things are.
Did you want the governance?
Yeah, well, yeah. There's just one other matter I would like to raise, which is another suggested recommendation in here. And I appreciate and I apologise for the late notice. It didn't come through in Graham's report, but in terms of the governance setup of the Kiwi House Trust, just unless it goes through on my own thoughts around lending any facility or any business $2 million of ratepayers' money, and also comes with recommendations from Jonathan Salter from Simpson Grierson, who I consulted with real early on in the piece here. Bruce Robertson, our chair of the Risk and Assurance Committee, Stephen Hallowell, who did his report on us from Working Smarter, obviously, and Graham Wilshire's recommendation and his submission, along with some other members of the public that I've talked to. And I apologise again to the Kiwi House Committee for the late notice here, but I'd like to add this as another condition, and that being, as a condition of the loan, provision is made in the Otorohanga Kiwi House Charitable Trust deed for Council to appoint a trustee to the trust, and that this process is completed by 31 December 2020. So it'll be 6 months' time. Open to discussion, councillors. Whether you feel we're going too far on this, or we just want direct reporting, I really need some sort of feedback from you all. Yes, councillor.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, Your Worship. It's exactly the point that I was going to raise myself, was the representation issue. So I think what you're suggesting there is eminently sensible. I think you support it.
Yes, councillor.
Yeah, I support it as well. Like, I'm against a council person on it, as we discussed last time, but I think we looked at the reason that the rest of the finance and or loans are coming through because of what we're doing means that the rest of the people are counting on us to do the diligence, and this is the way of doing it. So I support it 100%.
Yes, councillor.
It's something that concerns me, but as long as it doesn't implicate the council, that's fine.
Councillor?
Yeah, I'm in favour of that, but I'd also like it as well as quarterly reporting to
For sure.
to see
That'd be
all
fundamental, yeah.
Through you,
Yes,
Chair,
Councillor?
I support it, and just, I suppose for clarification, it would be a position that you would advertise and get expressions of interest from the community?
I believe so.
Yep.
Councillor Williams?
Yeah, I support that. That was in the early documents that's earlier on done, not yes. It was. It's been there, that being continuous there from the beginning. So it's not really something new.
No, it's just missing from this report, so probably this come as a bit of a surprise. So we've got the original, any discussions around the loan documents, interest rates or anything, councillors? If not, we've got 4 recommendations. The first one, after consideration of submissions received, council resolves to support the proposed redevelopment of the Otorohanga Kiwi House for the $2 million loan. Part 2, the loan terms and conditions be adopted as follows. 3, being as a condition of the loan, provision is made in the Otorohanga Kiwi House Charitable Trust deed for council to appoint a trustee to the trust, and that this process is completed by 31 December 2020. And I don't have that 4th one complete yet.
And the 4th one is the Chief Executive and Mayor be given delegated authority to finalise the terms and conditions of the loan agreement. If, in the opinion of the Chief Executive and Mayor, the conditions vary from what was originally intended by Council, a report would come to Council to approve those changes.
Awesome. I'd like to move those recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Ferguson. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 85, Annual Plan 2020-21. Graham or Brendan?
It's got Graham's name on it, but I put it together, so I'm going to talk to it. I wrote the report and put Graham's name on it, but then he threw it back at me. So
It's a good annual plan. Brendan wrote it, if it isn't, Graham wrote it.
So I guess just covering off what's in the. We'll just briefly go because most of the talk about the annual plan has obviously been in workshops and stuff. So overall, we've ended up with a rates increase of, as you can see in the comments from the Mayor and Chief Exec, average across the district of 1.43. Now, obviously, because we had a revaluation this year, people are going to be above that, below that. That's just the average income increase for the council. And then the breakdown there is the rural area is 1%, Otorohanga community was 2.49%, and Kawhia Aotea was 1.71%. Again, those are averages across those communities, so individual properties will vary somewhere between negative 100 and who knows what the top is, I guess. Depends on what's happened. If they've built a new house or something, it might have a significant impact. And I guess just the other thing, because this is the 3rd year of our long-term plan, and predominantly the annual plan is based on the 3rd year, the long-term plan, there haven't been significant changes, but I'm just going to cover off before you go through it, just some of the significant changes that I've highlighted in the annual plan. So in the, yep.
Can I just ask before
Yes.
we start that,
Yep.
as a memory refresh, in revenue,
Yes.
the big areas are like activity fees, well, they're not necessarily big.
Yeah.
They're targeted in general rates.
Yes.
And then it varies across everything, other general sources.
Yeah. So that's predominantly internal recoveries. So that's on charging from department to activity, which is then offset in the expenditure in terms of employee costs and stuff. So it's the recoveries we make to cover the employee costs. Yeah.
So it's still revenue from rates.
No.
Well, originally it would have been.
It's part of the rates figures, the target and the general rates, yeah, but it's not additional income.
No.
From an accounting point of view, it is.
Yeah.
From a actual physical dollars coming in the door point of view, it's not. If that makes sense.
How do you get a deal with that?
Right, so just going through the land transport. So the main changes in here from what's in the long-term plan for year 3 is around capital expenditure, and that's predominantly due to we brought some projects forward from year 3 into year 2. We've done those this year. There's some moving with the way that the NZTA funding works for roading stuff. It's basically a 3-year chunk every time we do an LTP, and we can sort of move within that 3 years as we need to. And so just depending on how we're going in terms of projects, if we've got spare capacity to do the work this year, we might bring some stuff forward. If we can't do it, we might push it out a year. So again, that 3 years ties up with the 3 years of the LTP. So we're coming into the 3rd year of that NZTA funding. Is that pretty much the way to explain it, Roger?
Yeah, that's an accurate summary. The major reason that we move things forward is Waikeria Road, because this is the 1st year of the NZTA funding block.
Yep. Cool. Water supply, which is page 6. So the main changes here, again from the LTP, is predominantly around capital expenditure. Most of the operating expenditure is fairly consistent. A lot of that is Te Aroha water treatment plant, which we've been carrying over year on year for a number of years now. And then some pipeline renewals and the Kawhia clarifier tank, replacing that, moving the one that's there now to town, and some work there. Page, oh no, I've skipped a page. Oh, yep.
Can we ask questions as we go through?
Yep.
As we go through?
Yep.
It's just under your performance target column. The percentage of real water loss from the network reticulation system to 30%.
Yeah.
I think I've raised this before, but I'm really concerned that figure is that high, 30%. We're basically saying that we're paying for 100% of the water treatment, but we're only getting 70% benefit. So 30% of everything we produce is going down the tube somewhere.
If we hit that target, yeah. I mean, that's obviously a target we want to stay below.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a target we want to stay below.
And I can't remember what it was last year.
Particularly from the Kawhia thing, and given the report that's come later in the agenda about the potential problem that Kawhia may have with water.
Yeah.
Whether we should be trying to target that and bring that target down somehow.
Yep, through your worship. So just to remind you that the performance targets are set in the long-term plan.
Yes.
So they're consulted on and they're set for 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's for us to look at these really, really closely, and we have an opportunity coming up not too far in the future to look at these. And I expect that these were set, although Roger may correct me, because that was sort of the information we had on our infrastructure at the time.
Yep.
And that felt like a prudent figure. We've done a lot of work, I think, in the last 3 years, understanding the state of our assets. So I'm sure there may be a movement there. If there isn't, then to me that says we need to invest more in order to bring that down. So that would be the message, I think, unless Roger has anything else to
absolutely agree with Chief Executive Councillor, particularly with Kawhia. We're discussing how do we do that better. We need to talk about metering, for instance, has different benefits in Otorohanga. And I'm just talking about controlling water. I'm not talking about finances or anything. I'm purely talking about the operation ability to know where leaks are. So those are things that are under consideration at the moment.
Thank you. So this is, as you say, more of an LTP thing. So bring it up then.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Page 9, sewage treatment. So again, the operating expenditures isn't significantly different from the long-term plan. It's mostly around capital expenditure again. A large part of that is the fence around the treatment ponds, which I think was $250,000. And then it's the coagulation trial and treatment that we've been doing, just the costs for that, which wasn't in the long-term plan either. Next one should be, page 12, flood protection and control works. So again, operating expenditure is relatively consistent with what was in the long-term plan. It's around capital expenditure and relining of the discharge pipes around Hupatia flood station. Page 14, being stormwater. So the most significant change here is again a capital one, and that's putting in the 50,000 for development renewals. So this was a fund that's been put aside. It's not earmarked for any particular work, but this is to cover, as was the case with the timber company where we needed to reroute a stormwater line because of the building work they're doing. This just gives us a bit of money to do that without having to come back to council every time.
Not like it was an ability to improve the level of service simultaneously with.
Yes.
Just for clarity.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
Roger, or the work that you're doing on, like the assessment work that you're doing on the infrastructure,
Yes.
where is, that's not capital, or is it?
Probably my interpretation of it is it's not capital yet, but depending on what falls out of it, it may well become capital.
Potentially, yes.
It's reasonably substantial, it's a substantial piece of work,
That's a
that assessment and.
yes,
Wastewater
survey.
modelling is capital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we, I think, probably discussed it here, we also basically negotiated with RATA to fund a lot of that work.
Okay.
Because RATA has established a water element in the same way they're doing with the road. And we basically positioned this as an ideal opportunity for RATA to move into that space, and also for them to cover the cost out of contributions from the other councils and then share the data with the other councils. So I think that was.
Roger, just a clarification for all the councils in
Sorry.
East, acronym RATA.
Sorry, it's the Regional Asset Technical Accord, sorry. It used to be the Roading Asset Technical Accord, but because now they've branched into water, it's become regional rather than roads, and it's basically a centralised, it falls under the Waikato LAS umbrella in terms of management. Sorry.
Okay, page 16, community services. So again, the main changes here from the long-term plan are all capital based. Repairs to the outdoor swimming pool here in town, and installation of heating, heat pumps and air conditioning in the pensioner housing, which is a requirement of the Act as a landlord. We have to put those in. They weren't in the long-term plan, obviously, and also there's some reserve improvements for piping open drains and some other little bits and pieces that have been identified since we did the LTP 3 years ago. Next page, skip one. Next page. Page 21, the regulatory services. So a lot of these changes, they don't have much capital, so most of these are actually in operational. And that's due to some increased staff costs, training requirements in terms of the building area, just with the requirement for them to have diplomas. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was diploma or degree. Environmental health, there's some increased costs for meeting the requirements. We've got some increased resource requirements there as well. So Waipa's providing more staff than what they were doing when they did the LTP. And then environmental services manager, so the economic and community manager, or Trish's role, has been moved under Andrew, so that's been moved into this department. It used to sit under governance and leadership, so there's been a decrease in there that's led to an increase in the regulatory services group. Over the page, or a couple of pages, on 25, community development. So the main change here is actually a decrease because we had the 4 million in the first year of the LTP to do the work at Thompson Ave, which obviously we haven't done anything for, so therefore there's no property sales for us to record associated with that, so we'll remove those. And then over the page, on page 27, just in governance and leadership, so we've increased the budget for the long-term plan quite significantly to include all the community consultation that we will be doing. We've put in 500,000 that council has earmarked for economic recovery from COVID-19, which is being funded from reserves, so there's no rates impact from using that money. And then there's some additional costs in democratic process because of the switch to the pool system that we now pay for councillors out of, which was after the LTP was done. Yep.
Just page 25, the community development.
Yep.
I was sort of hoping that because we're renewing the long-term plan, there would be something there to say that we were going to do a lot more investigating on land development, that kind of thing, planning. But it's not even mentioned.
Yeah, through you. So that will form part of our engagement on the next long-term plan. So that was feedback that came from the strategic session the other week with Stephen Finlay.
Yeah, I realise that. But this is this coming year.
Yep.
And there's like nothing.
Yep. Exactly. So if you want some money put in there, then we can, to do town planning and district planning, etc. At the moment we have, what is our 2-day-a-week planner, district planner, who
Yeah.
processes consents. Yeah, and that's the level of service we have in that area at the moment. So if council wants more of a level of service in that area, then we need to fund it. And I think that it's probably such a change that we actually need to go and talk to our community about it, but happy to take feedback in this room.
I guess in terms of the initial finding out from the public what they want and stuff, those costs are actually covered under the LTP, not as part of the community development. So they're in the LTP costs, not in this cost centre.
I realise that there's
Yeah.
a whole year to go by without something happening, but I would like to see some money put in there.
Not necessarily money that I was thinking, but documents are quite disconnected, aren't they? So if someone was to pick, if the community reader was picking this document up, they wouldn't see that. They'd have to read other stuff as well to find out that this document is pretty much reporting on a historical decision, and whether, is there provision in there to say that, future developments are being considered in the long-term plan that was effective from such and such a date?
I think through you, Worship, that would be perhaps preempting before we've gone out to our community and said, we think that doing this is a good idea, what do you think? And they say, well, we think that's a dumb idea, we want you to riparian plant all the rivers, or I don't know. That's kind of, I guess, the whole point of an early engagement process is you have come up with some really great ideas and a way forward and what you think will ensure a bright, prosperous future for the district, and now we go and check that with the community. So this is year 3 of something that's already in place, which is a bit frustrating, I know, and I can hear it coming through, and in a way that's kind of good, because we're ready to do some different stuff and some more proactive.
So we've talked about it before at meetings over the last year. We've talked about it. Does the councillors themselves not have any influence over what could happen? And a year's a long time.
So we can put through you, Your Worship, we can, like we have with COVID, the $500,000. So you could say, we want to accelerate that now. We want to put some, extra funding into that area and start really looking at it. But my thinking was that it came out of a long-term plan discussion for next time round. If you wanted to bring it forward and have it in year 3, this next year, then what I'm saying is we're not going to be able to do it with existing resource. It's quite specific skills that we need to talk town and district planning, and we would need to either free up some of our time in that area or get an expert in. Andrew, if you have anything different to say, then let me know. But
I suppose within that whole area there are different streams of work. So you have your district plan where you try and I suppose articulate your rule settings and your parameters for how you're going to run your district, what the rule settings are, and then I suppose you have the more inspirational type stuff like what's going to be rolled out with the LTP, and it's bringing taking those ideas and that and trying to put a set of rules around them so that you give them substance, and that when people engage and invest in your district that they that you direct them to invest in the correct places and in the manner that you I suppose that your concept where you wanted them, so that you direct the growth, and it's growth that you want, not any growth at any cost.
It may not be growth, it could be arrangement. I just think it's an opportunity missed.
I think what's exciting, I think though, Councillor, is what we're embarking on in the next few weeks in this engagement process, so we can really get a clear determination of where the changes are and what this expenditure is going to be. And I think they will be substantial. So
we're going to sit on our hands for a year.
No, not sitting on our hands. No, it's consulting and formulating and getting a real structure around what we're doing in terms of the LTP process. And it may be that a planner is a permanent fixture in getting this. What is it? Planning a plan?
Yeah.
Concept.
Yeah.
Concept.
I thought we were going to get a planner this year.
we haven't got any
Strategic
money in the strategic planner to do the long-term plan and that. I hope that councillors aren't going to be sitting on their hands, because we've got 13 community meetings to do in a month. So if that's not getting out there and listening to what our people are wanting, then I don't know what is. And I think,
it's a monumental change from what we've done in the past, so I think that is probably a good starting point. Councillor Chris.
I was just going to say, next month we start early engagement, and I think from those meetings we'll actually get an idea if the people want what we've been talking about, and then they'll understand when there might be an extra cost to them, because we've brought them along for the ride. I think if we try and find money for something now and get a planner going out and doing stuff, it might not be the vision of the people that the planner starts working on.
Keeping in mind we're adopting an annual plan here with the rates increase that's been indicated there. If we want to make a fundamental change to that in COVID-19 year, good luck to anybody.
Oh, well, I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
I think in light of what's gone on in the last few months in New Zealand and around the world, I think where we're at the moment is pretty damn good.
I'm just thinking about Otorohanga. I'm disappointed.
One of the discussions that I've been wanting to have with council for quite a while, and I wanted to have it straight after the election as part of the Stephen Finlay session, but it didn't quite happen. I think we sort of ran out of time. Was, and I have talked with you about this before, is what does growth look like for you? What does it look like and what doesn't it look like? Because I'd probably bet money that if I went round the room and asked you to articulate what that looks like to us, you might all have a different version of that. And so that would be a really good discussion to have before we went out and employed a planner and started putting a township plan together or a district concept plan. I think I would like to have that discussion at some point.
I'd just like to say, my team are literally run off their feet. I've just had the meeting with the Hickey Valley Dairy Company that's due to kick off in 3 months' time. Massive infrastructure project, $300 million plus. We're doing the largest social infrastructure build in the nation's history out of Waikeria, $1 billion. We just had the plant up, what's Name Road, the biomedical plant, 30 or 40 jobs, probably a couple of $1 million. So, if you want more stuff, you're going to have to put more bottoms on seats and articulate exactly what it's going to be, because you've got growth now. So, I think,
Not very romantic.
Yeah, we're talking about a long-term plan here, so I concur with what Councillor Kloss is saying, but one of the things that we had on that board just last week was about being nimble, and you can't actually be nimble unless you've made some plan to be nimble, and we don't have a plan to be nimble. We're very
not nimble. We're not nimble.
It's trying to change a train off its tracks, isn't it?
That's a feature of the legislation that we work in, not the village that we live in.
But the fact of the matter is, if we can get a $500 post-COVID fund going, why isn't there a nimble fund? Is that it, so that we can actually help? Help Andrew with another bum on a seat, or
I would say that we are nimble. We've managed all of that stuff. Plus, we've got a 140 lot subdivision that's been all consents approved, ready to break ground. Biggest subdivision ever in the district's history. Now, if you can't manage all that, I think we've been extremely nimble given our resources.
I'm bound to support Andrew on that statement.
Oh, I'm supporting you too. We just want to give you the tools. If you need another bum on the seat,
So that'll be the beauty of this consultation process, because everything costs money, and if the community's behind, I won't say significant rates increase, but if they're looking at growth, then everything costs. Gladys. But, you know, in saying that, we do have those big infrastructure projects which are obviously going to help out in terms of contribution to rates as well.
Not balance.
I don't think there's any intention of, well, there's no intention to criticise staff. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, that's nothing to do with it.
No, I just wanted to make that clear. I got the impression that we were getting a bit defensive on things, which is fair enough. I understand that, but as long as it's understood that it's not a criticism of anyone. Yeah. Okay.
And thank you, Councillor. If I through your worship, I am really heartened by this discussion. I'm heartened by the fact that we say that we've increased resourcing in some of the areas, and you don't push back. You don't say, you know, it's not a grilling of the chief executive. You know, I guess I'm heartened by the fact that you want us to be more nimble, more flexible, get things moving. Why do we have to wait? That's a direction that we need. It's a direction I need so that I can come back to you and say, well, actually, if we want to bring those ideas to life, this is, you know, how we could do it. So we are moving from what I've seen, and it's all through our plans. It's kind of what attracted me to this role, actually. We're moving from a state of a reasonably static, you know, kind of growth phase into, even with COVID, into a growth phase. And it's exciting.
I think so. Like, it was part of, as we all know, part of the whole interview process to find somebody who could actually lead that change from what was a static and very conservative approach the council had traditionally. But going back to the point that Councillor Williams raised, it's just systematic of the legislation we work under, that change isn't quite as fast as we'd like it at times. And it's interesting watching others coming from the outside in, believing they can make change and even being critical of leadership around this table, and then sensing the frustration and then coming across the roadblocks that we confront on a daily basis. But I think this public consultation process for us is going to be absolutely fundamental in where we go, and it will give the capacity of the staff to fulfil the aspirations of ourselves, Councillor Cross.
It just takes a very long time to warm things up.
It does, eh? But once it gets going, my goodness, imagine the momentum then. We hope. Watch the space.
Yes, we're in a fiscally sound position, and I don't want to be the chief executive that runs amok with the chief. So I'm acutely aware that we have people out there, you know, struggling to make ends meet. I think our rate increases are very prudent. For this year, we've got a chance to reflect on the impact of COVID. And we're doing some work in that area, as I've said before. So, yeah, it's sort of gently as we go, but with some haste.
And I think the great thing about next year, if there is increases, not as a consequence of being incredibly conservative about where our rates increases are this year, where you'll find around the country there'll be a lot of councils having to put increases of maybe 5% over and above what they should have been, because they've been saving face this year for the sake of their ratepayers. So at least we're in that strong position going forward.
It's not all about money. It's actually changing.
Absolutely, it's all about money.
It's actually about changing people's thinking and looking differently at something. And that for me is the biggest issue, is reluctance to change or look at the world slightly differently and looking at the opportunities. It's going to take probably the whole next long-term plan to get people into slightly different mindsets.
Yeah, there's two sides to that as well. We can talk for hours on this. I mean, in the meeting we had with the PDU yesterday, what was identified from a number of speakers was the level of social deprivation across the northern country. So when we talk about change, it's not all about money. For a lot of our ratepayers in this district and south of us, money is the fundamental of their existence. It's what they need to get through on a daily basis to pay their rent for someone who's paying their rates. So I've got to be incredibly mindful of that the level of social deprivation in this part of the country is not that different to Northland.
I'm not saying it is.
So I think that's why we have to be mindful as a council. So if we are nimble, it's got to be money well spent. I think that's the big part of it. Okay, moving on, Brendan.
Cool. So that's the major significant changes from the long-term plan. I guess Councillor Jeffries rang me yesterday. There was a couple of minor little issues that he discovered. I hadn't updated the table of contents, so the dates in that were wrong. So I've done that now. Also, at the time I put this together to go with the agenda, we didn't have a new councillor, or we didn't know who it was. Since then we now do, so I've put that name in the actual bit at the end and said sworn in on the 21st of July, which will be next meeting.
Can't change it by now.
You're now on the annual plan.
You're in our plan.
And also just with the council appointees to the community boards, I've just put a little bit at the end saying council representative as well. That was just another suggestion that Councillor Jeffries had. Apart from that, yeah, is there any other questions about I suppose fees and charges would be the other thing to talk about. We haven't changed any of the fees and charges, again, to reflect the COVID thinking that we don't want to suddenly put all the fees up for certain things. So, yeah, there's no changes to the fees and charges from last year. But are there any other questions about the annual plan? Yes.
So, in relation to the fees and charges, does staff have a feel for where there might be a significant reduction in activity fees?
Might mean Andrew would be the one to talk about.
Well, our application numbers are strong, so no, I think our fees are probably on a regional basis would be generally at the lower end of the scale. I mean, currently it's quite a reasonable to high level of subsidy across the activities. It's quite high in the environmental services. I mean, the likes of the food and your health licences, mainly because there's no scale there. It's such a small number of businesses to try and divide across the activity across. But the building's strong, good recoveries there, planning sort of middle of the road, I suppose.
And we discussed in the workshop the other day, I believe, was around building consents and the change of criteria there, and the feeling is from Phil especially that probably won't have an influence or much of one.
Yeah, it's a bit of an unknown. I know that a lot of anecdotally we've been told a lot of the product suppliers are reluctant to get on board with it, mainly because, say, for example, you've got a franchise for versatile garages. Last thing you need is to sell one of your kit sets to someone and have them put it up on the front lawn and then it looks shabby. It's not a very good reflection on the product. So there's a number of warranty and sort of product image things around for that for a lot of these businesses. Yeah.
I think people are forgetting they still have to put it up according to the rules.
Yeah, I hope so, yes. It's Councillor Price.
I looked really hard through this to see if there was any mention of recycling. And there isn't. And yet, we were asked some time ago for our thoughts, what we'd like to see happen about recycling.
So page 18 is our performance measures around solid waste, which includes refuse and recycling. So that talks about, so our target is to increase our recycling volumes over the previous year by 1%. 1%? Yeah. And then also, oh no, that's curbside collection. No, yeah, so that's the measure we have around recycling at this point. Obviously, as part of the long-term plan, we can put more measures in around recycling if that's where council wants to go. So, because we can't change these because it's part of the long-term plan, that's just what we have in terms of performance measures at this point.
I would like to, I thought we were going to be a bit more proactive.
Those as Brendan just signified or signalled, these here are written at the start of the last LTP process, so they're there on paper. We can't change that, what in terms of what those are. But when we get to middle of next year or earlier on next year, when we get to go through all of these figures, that is when we can say this is what our aspiration is. It won't be 1%, you may say, or may decide around the table it's 15%. And that is where we have to change the budgets accordingly, and then obviously the contracts accordingly as well. So that's when the changes get made. And we had a meeting yesterday with Roger, and there's a whole lot of indicators there, and another area of council performance that we weren't meeting those KPIs. It's because they probably weren't set right. So it's looking at where those I suppose guides are to ensure that we're actually reaching what we're after. But that there is the discussion further next year. We can't change what's on paper here now.
Through you, Your Worship, it's likely to be later this year actually. We'll start talking about service levels, and in actual fact, we were going to have a workshop on waste management at some stage, and we deferred that, and then we had lockdown, so we deferred it again.
That's
So
right.
Roger might be able to.
We basically,
enlighten us on that.
with, well, not just with COVID, but even pre-COVID, the whole landscape around recycling globally has changed and shifted. So EnviroWaste are actively involved in a national group, basically trying to work out how this is going to work. As soon as their manager's got an idea of what those indications are, he's going to come back to us and have that workshop. We just didn't see, no point in having the workshop if we didn't know what the answer was, or at least an indication what the answer may be more accurately.
Okay, any more annual plan related questions? If not, then I guess that's the annual plan. So the next committee recommendations.
That's why I didn't put that in my mouth, isn't it?
Just before we pass the resolution, I just want to thank Brendan for the work that he's done on this. So to get an annual plan out under the conditions that we had during lockdown, and there was some I guess other issues as well. We moved Magic into the cloud, and Brendan had to rebuild half the enterprise system that did all our budget forecasting. So just want to personally thank him. It was a pretty big achievement. So.
Yeah, thanks for that, Grant.
Just remembered something else. The $2 million loan to the Kiwi House and the associated interest and stuff is included in this annual plan. It was included based on the assumption you were going to adopt the previous report. So it is in there, just in case anyone was wondering.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There's no further questions. We have a recommendation that annual plan 2021 be adopted. Moved Councillor Jeffries, seconded Councillor Ferguson, all in favour? Aye. Thank you. Thanks, Brendan. Cool. Moving on, item 86, rates resolution. This is you, Graham, I presume.
You want me to do it too?
Yeah, I can do it if you like. So this resolution always follows the annual plan resolution. So it's just our basically gives us the authority to set rates for the forthcoming year. Generally, before we do this report, we do what's called a dummy strike, just to make sure that we've got all the rates in the dollar and the decimal points and everything in the right place, and that we're going to get the correct amount of revenue, because it's a bit of a major to get it wrong, which some councils have found out over the years. So this incorporates the changes from the last meeting with the rates relief, so reducing the penalty interest from 10% to 5%, and then moving those penalty dates out. When we do the rates notices will probably go out in mid-July, as per normal, and we'll include in that just the those changes that we've made around rates relief as well, and direct debits and payment arrangements and things. They can contact council.
Anything further to add, Brendan, or is
No. So I guess each of the rates that are in here is in the annual plan from page 50 onwards. The table in there, they should correspond. Yeah.
Page 54 is a reflection of this.
Yeah.
Councillor Johnson.
Just with regard to the water rates, are they set by actual committees, or are they?
Yes. For the rural schemes, yes. Yeah. So they had their meetings in February, before the lockdown, and they all went through, and everyone decided to actually increase one or both of their charges in terms of the meter or the per cubic meter charge.
So they're really already adopted by the users. We're just ticking the box.
Well, the committee for the users, at least, yeah. And they again take effect from the 1st of July. So the bill that's just gone out is still under the old charges.
So we've the Otorohanga metered water. We've held that at the same rate as the current year. So
And
there's been
Carpia, actually.
and Carpia as well. So there's been no increase there. So look, the predictions looking at Otorohanga, we're going to be pretty much on target this year. So yeah, I think under the circumstances, if we can hold it, it was best to hold it.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors?
Just one point, Your Worship, if you try to marry up some of the rates that show in the rating resolutions with the examples shown in the annual plan, I had the discussion with Brendan, and some of those figures have actually been bundled up, so you mightn't always see, for example, looking at it, just as an example, the separate uniform rate, the UAG, for example, of 39987. If you look through your through this thing in the annual plan, you won't find it because it's part of something else. I just wanted to. I found that not confusing, but if someone wanted to drill down and have a look at the rates resolution and try and compare it to what's in here, they may find it that way. So it's not a big deal, and Brendan and I have had the discussion. I'm very happy with what he's reduced, but I just wanted to make the point that if you're trying to compare what's in there with what's in here, you won't find it.
Oh, I see, in the examples. Yeah, okay, well, sorry, I was thinking, oh my God, haven't we got the UAGC?
Yeah.
Sure, I saw it in there.
No,
Thanks, councillor. Okay, so we have the staff recommendation that the Otorohanga District Council set the following rates under the Local Government Rating Act 2002 on rating units in the district for the financial year commencing 1 July 2020 and ending 30 June 2021. We can move on a second for that, please. Move Councillor Johnson, second Councillor Christensen, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you again, guys. Moving on to item 87. Carpia water supply future equipment. Roger, you speak to us.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, just as a brief introduction, this report originated from discussions with Tony County Incorporated, who were quite proactive in talking to council, and the scope of work is actually a reflection of those conversations that we had. So I just wanted to be clear that this isn't a request from TKI to subsidise council or council to subsidise them. It's actually a collaborative idea, which I think has some merit. I think I've taken the report as read and answer any questions you may have, councillors.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. Reading through that, it certainly does have a lot of merit, and it's really good to see that collaborative approach for obviously future sustainability of Carpia's water supply, which is the biggie, and for EV themselves. Any questions, councillors?
Just one, Your Worship. Is this report going to the community board?
The report has been discussed with Dave Walsh as the chair. He's had sight of it.
Okay. Good.
And also been discussed with TKI before it's published.
Okay. Because it is a concern, isn't it, that the water.
It is, councillor. We've become aware of that concern more recently, so it's quite timely, actually.
It was one of the reasons why I raised that net water loss thing when we were talking about the plan. But also I wondered whether it was time for us to consider water meters out of the water.
But look, my personal view is that it is. But that again, I think will form part of the long-term planning.
No, I think it is timely, certainly in light of what's happening in Auckland, and just reading an article the other day about another council within the Waikato not putting in water meters because they said it was more costly than finding out the water sources. So it's like they weren't giving due consideration to the conservation of water, which I thought was a wee bit short-sighted. But that's their council's decision. So yeah, I think the water meter discussion down the track is certainly a worthy one to have, council.
And I would like to suggest that we use more use of water tanks.
Absolutely.
That is part of the regulation.
Just one other question, Your Worship. I've seen actually a preliminary plan of where they thought the water was. And the only comment I would make that is we're only interested, aren't we, in water that's flowing towards the township. We're not interested in the water going towards the sea.
Primarily we're interested in the water that's flowing into the springs that are feeding the water treatment plant.
Exactly, yeah. So whatever's flowing towards the sea really is TKI's.
In simple terms, yes, but we need to make sure those aquifers aren't linked. Because there's a possibility that it may drain from over here that stops it draining this way. So yeah, this information is going to be vital.
Right. As long as I understand that, we will be reluctant to provide them access to water that is flowing towards the
look, the absolute basis of the conversation was they wanted to ensure that that did not happen.
Yeah.
But any plans they made would not negatively impact on the supply of water to the township.
Thank you. That's great.
Councillor Johnson.
Oh, yeah, I was just curious with the map here with the yellow boxes. Is that going to be the drilling, is it, or what?
No, it's basically a surface probe in simple terms.
Okay.
I can copy the more technical stuff if you wish, Councillor. I didn't want to put it in the report because it's.
I was just thinking that
it's basically non-invasive at this stage.
Yeah.
Based on the result of this, the next step will then be to do drilling to further verify that from TKI's perspective.
Yeah, I just thought it was a bargain if it was.
No, it doesn't include drilling. No, it's way more expensive, but it will be a heck of a bargain, that's for sure.
And the other interesting thing too is the thermal activity on the beach too. I mean, what comes of that? Well, probably analysis too.
Yeah, it will be interesting.
They will pick that up too, I imagine.
Thanks, councillors. Any further questions, Roger? Okay, we have the two recommendations here. The council approved funding 25% of the cost of aquifer assessment of the Carpenter and surrounding aquifers being an amount of $70,840. 75% allocated to the cost centre to Carpenter water supply. Two, council note this expenditure is not budgeted for. However, there is a surplus of $100,000 in the Carpenter water supply account that this will be funded from. Do we have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved Councillor Jeffries, seconded Councillor Williams. All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Roger. Really good. It's been interesting to see that.
Good report.
Okay, moving on to our planners. Gone. Here it is. Moving on to the planning report for January to March 2020. Primary return, Andrew.
Andrew, just explain how nimble it is.
Without a date, this is for the first quarter of the calendar year up to March. There'll be another report for the second quarter at the council meeting in July. So pretty consistent level of activity in the planning space. I suppose the couple of projects of note there, the extension to the warehouse at ATC over on Factory Drive and the bovine processing plant up on Tapawai Road. Otherwise, we're pretty much normal consent activities for this period. Any questions about any of those projects?
How many of these were caught up with lockdown?
Sorry.
The building activities, how many would be impacted by the lockdown?
Well, I'm aware that most of the major projects are all underway. They all stopped work. They weren't allowed to, construction wasn't considered an essential activity, but yeah, most of them are all underway. We're still getting a good level of consent applications.
Thank you, Andrew. Any further questions, councillors? Now we've got the recommendation of the planning report for January to March 2020 be received. I move that. Seconded Councillor Johnson. All in favour?
Right.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Moving on to Animal Control Officer's report. That'll be reviewed.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, it's pretty
straightforward.
sparse report, this one. Again, it's only up till March. Staff did very well to get most of the paperwork and the applications out next round of registration while sort of in lockdown mode. So I'll probably report on that, a bit more detail around registration numbers and that. report in July. If there are any questions, I know there's not a lot of information there.
Henry, does Griff, does he have set rounds that he does on a regular basis, or does he just react to calls?
He's one man, yeah, no, it's pretty reactionary. Yeah.
So would most of those be fair to say, would most of those be in the urban area, or are they?
No, I mean, he's all over the place.
All over the place.
Yeah. There's been, we were discussing it with him yesterday, and there's been quite a marked change in behaviour. He said that often what he's finding now, people are actually quite reluctant to have other people on their properties, not from a compliance or an enforcement role, just around the whole contact thing. Right. He said, whereas before people would say find a dog, tie it up, and they're now much more kind of proactive in that they'll make their own inquiries and get someone to come and take the dog back to its owner rather than having a third party come into the picture.
So in terms of enforcing that bylaw that we've just introduced, is that something that Griff would do?
He would get, but again, it'd be on a complaints basis. He wouldn't start doing patrols outside of, in his contract, he's got to do a set number of patrols in urban areas, and yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thanks, Andrew. So at the start of the recommendation that the report submitted by the Group Manager Environments on dog and animal control activities for the third quarter of the 2019-20 financial year be received. Mover Councillor Jeffrey, seconded Councillor Ferguson. All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Carried. Awesome. Moving on to, thank you, Andrew. Moving on to Councillor update. Start with you, Councillor Jeffries.
Well, I've got nothing to report.
Yeah.
Councillor Fox.
I have. Intersection lights. I nearly, after the last meeting, I nearly ended up in Naroma. And this is I've been doing this up for umpteen years now. And I thought I was on a promise to actually have some lights fitted to Seafane Road intersection and Westwood Road. It's gone dead on me.
Through you, Worship. I think, Councillor, where that stalled was, it was perhaps suggested there was a need to consult with local residents who might not be appreciative of light spill into their houses.
I did consult. And there are no houses actually near us.
I think it's fair to say that it's back on the agenda, Councillor. Thank you.
It's back on the agenda.
Well, yes, I mean, it wasn't a desire not to do it, it was, that's why it stopped. And then be totally candid with you, it's completely skipped my mind for the last 4 months.
Okay, well, it hasn't skipped mine. Second one is funds for rural sports and exercise activities. It was very good to see that Sport Waikato came up with a lot of funds and they were distributed around the town. And then I was hit up by a resident who does a lot of work with principally young mothers and women in the district, and that they have had to stop some of their Pilates and
Yoga?
no, it was nasty. What do you go to a camp? Boot camp. And so here she is trying to apply for funds because they can't afford it, because they were having to pay for the tutors to come out and do that kind of, and the extra money is not available in the rural areas at this current time, because most of these people are they're not farm owners. And so, I think when someone's considering, this money going out, I think you've got to remember that you've got a big rural area there too, and some of them are quite well organised in what they want to do.
Support my discussion.
Through your worship, do we have a contact person from this particular group that maybe I could ask Trish or someone to?
Judy Sheriff.
Judy Sheriff, yeah, okay.
I mean, the group is over 30 people. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ferguson.
Well, not too much. We had a bit of a COVID response to our creative communities grants meeting the other day, which we got through. Just note that young animators thing is on through the school holidays. So, yeah, so we're backing that. So if anyone's around, you're most welcome to go and see. That's passed on from Derek.
Councillor Christensen.
I've just attended two meetings since our last council meeting, and that was the ODB meeting and also the health and welfare support meeting that's run through the support house. And I think my highlight of that meeting was that in our district we did not have a rise in domestic violence over COVID. So
That is
actually brought tears to my eyes in the meeting. Yeah, it's pretty cool to hear.
Awesome, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Just wondering, is it appropriate to mention the joint committee notes from Julian with regard to expansion of the isolation? Just an update on what the growth in the move from Auckland to Rotorua is going to be more activity in the Waikato.
Yeah, I don't think that was confidential, was it?
Sorry?
The email from Julian yesterday,
so, no.
I don't think
No,
it was
it's
confidential. Yeah, so yeah, feel free to talk about it.
Oh, that was essentially
Yeah.
what it is. There will be more in our, well, not necessarily in our area, but
No.
there will be other hotels that will be
Transit
open. People,
Getting
they're requesting,
out of the city.
requesting support from NEMA trained staff, and they'll be trying to use their own professional staff before they ask for our local qualified people to.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
No, it's not long since we had our last meeting, so nothing to report.
Okay, well, good. Nothing further. Something strange going on here, people. If that's the case, I will, no more agenda items, past 11, I still feel this is strange, but I'll declare the meeting closed.
Well, you could do this every month, and just have a meeting a week apart.